on.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome to this final panel. Earlier, Betty from Valors congratulated the audience for surviving after lunch. And I just wanted to say, I want to congratulate Sonia and her team for surviving 10 years of hosting these events. So I think we're going to talk about some of the scars that some of us have of being in this industry for such a long time. But I remember the first event that I ever attended, I can't figure out if it was 2015 or 2016, but Andreas Antonopoulos was the keynote speaker in the morning. And if you've ever heard him speak, he's really incredible and passionate about Bitcoin. And he said that the first time he had attended, the conference was called the Bitcoin Africa Conference. And that year it was called the Blockchain Africa Conference. And he predicted that the next time he attended, it would be called the Distributed Ledger Technology Conference. But somehow the Blockchain Africa one stuck, and I'm very glad about that. We have an amazing panel here today. They've been in the industry for a very long time, more than 10 years. I think everybody sitting here. So you've really got some people who have been through some of the highs and lows that this industry has had to experience over the years. So thanks very much to everyone who's sitting here. All right, let's start. So Lorien, I'm actually going to kick off with you. I know you're passionate about a few things, but in terms of adoption, do you think, 15 years after Satoshi's paper, 10 years after these events started, do you think by this stage we would have been further along in terms of adoption? And then can you think of any use cases where you feel the adoption is like really taking off?
Yes, well, I mean, obviously I'm very optimistic about Bitcoin, the way Satoshi devised it, but I don't believe there has been any adoption, even though there are millions of people who are investing in crypto. I don't think buying crypto is adoption. Adoption means that you're using the technology to serve a purpose. It's not just about speculating on a token. You can do that, and you can go to a casino, and you can buy poker chips, but you're not adopting poker chips. So I think that there's been a massive, since really, maybe even in the like 2015, around about that stage, things started going off the rails. And I think it's because when Bitcoin was released, it coincided with the financial crisis. And everybody thought that Satoshi Nakamoto built Bitcoin because of the financial crisis. And obviously in the first transaction, he said that there was this newspaper article about banks and all that sort of thing. So the whole kind of ideology at that stage was set that this was a tool that was going to replace money. It was going to disintermediate central banking because that was evil, and we can't trust governments with our money or central banks with our money. And so now Satoshi Nakamoto has given us this tool where we can now free ourselves from the tyranny of the man and the government, and we can now have sound money. And that's really where things went off the rails, because then it became an exercise in trying to do everything to try and create a system and morph Satoshi's Bitcoin into a system that was resistant to the man. And that's when this idea of decentralization took on a new note, where it was about trying to stop government control. Whereas when you actually understand Satoshi's Bitcoin, it was about fitting in with the regulatory structures. And so all this time now, there's been blockchain after blockchain and crypto after crypto, all trying to replace and recreate what Satoshi Nakamoto created already. And of course, with exchanges, whose entire business model relies on there being millions of tokens, that is really what the activity has been. Yes, of course, we've got Solana and we've got Ethereum and there's smart contracts and there's all these wonderful novel ideas that people are trying to realize, but can't get right because only Satoshi Nakamoto figured it out. Yet we've abandoned Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin in favor of BTC, which is a government-resistant, sound money. And so I don't believe there's been any adoption. If you can show me where there is a service that people are using on a day-to-day basis that is better than existing tech that's out there and that's adding value to people's lives, sure, there we have adoption. But at the moment, I can tell you after 15 years or whatever it's been of Bitcoin, there's no adoption. I can at least say for Centbee, people on Centbee are using Centbee to be able to buy things and send money to cross border. I mean, that's adoption. But speculating on tokens, that's not adoption. That's just a casino. It's a speculative mindset, and it's a kind of hope that we will all get rich by investing in these new technologies. So I'm very pessimistic and saddened by this whole advent of crypto and especially this ideology of anarchy, trying to build technology that's government resistant. I can tell you now, that'll never happen. Satoshi knew that. That's why he made Bitcoin not government resistant. But all these cryptos you're trying, this decentralization thing, are going to fail.
Great. Thanks, Lorien. Thanks. Ernest, in terms of picking up on Lorien's point of adoption, I mean, you spoke about PAPS and the incredible, things that are happening there with trying to get trapped money moving across Africa. That's more, from what I've understood from your talk, it's more around the corporate space and payments in that space. But do you think that's one case where we are seeing some form of adoption, not from a Bitcoin perspective, but from a blockchain perspective or a stablecoin perspective, or if I can put it that way, or tokenization perspective? But do you think that are you seeing any real adoption on the ground from a retail perspective, or working on anything in that space?
Yes, there's been adoption. Like he mentioned earlier, Bitcoin was supposed to be a utility, drive all these different use cases. And Satoshi had that in mind. But it went from a utility token to a currency briefly, and then became this unobtainable asset that is now almost like a Frankenstein, if I put it that way. And it will keep going up. And so we looked at that and said, okay, what can we do for the most amount of people? And it was a big journey because everyone was excited more about the making money, going to the moon part in a Lamborghini. Whereas, how do we make it affordable and accessible to as many people as possible for the lowest possible cost? And so we went through a series of blockchains that were sort of inspired by Bitcoin, from the proof of work to now proof of stake, and what we have at the Bantu blockchain, the Harambee Federated Byzantine Agreement. I know it's a lot of words, but what it simply means is that you have trusted nodes working together. There is no mining, there's no energy use, and the transaction costs are literally zero, almost zero. So it means that we can begin to build real-world applications for real financial services for financial inclusion. And one of our key use cases was the project I talked about today. To solve this problem, imagine that they have to go and buy Bitcoin in order to make the transactions. Then you're dealing with the memory pools and the high cost of transaction and the energy and the whatever you call it, the carbon footprint on that. But with our own solution, our end users don't even know we're using blockchain. They don't care about it. It's just working. And even though we started with the corporates initially to solve a multi-billion-dollar problem that they are facing in real time, it's going to evolve to now support retail customers. For cross-border payments, you can sit maybe in Pretoria and buy something in Yaoundé in Cameroon or something in Ghana. And, we often say that air shouldn't cost money. Build value, build services on top of the blockchain, and don't turn it into an asset class that everybody now has to fight for. We are hearing about people like in my city in Toronto, where I come from. Someone got kidnapped about a week and a half ago, when the price crossed, I think, $85,000 of Bitcoin. And it's going to get worse. I tell everybody, if you're holding Bitcoin, you've got a big bullseye on your back. So we are focusing more on leveraging technology in a way that works for as many people as possible. And then, now that we've built what we built with the currency marketplace, we invited other partners to come on board, leverage the technology for other use cases, whether it's tokenization or serving people in farms or getting real estate tokens for teenagers or young or the Gen Z trying to get on the property ladder. All those real use cases. So in a way, I agree with my co-panelists here that putting too much focus on the whole Bitcoin frenzy, while it's exciting, it's not solving the real world problems. In fact, it might create more problems down the line for everyone, the regulators and the criminal class that will now be holding on to it. And I think the first slide I saw today was about Bitcoin going up and competing with gold. The bankers who've been around for centuries will not allow that. And we just need to focus on solving real problems versus speculation. My contribution.
Thanks, Ernest. Alakanani, I think Chris from Yellow Card today said that being in this industry, some of us have lived through hell. That's what he said. And I think that many of us have got some bruises and scars and all of that we've had personally of things that we've been through. And then also in terms of our businesses. You know, in a lot of ways, we depend on the regulators to step in when things go wrong. But then at the same time, the industry feels that, you know, we shouldn't, you know, we're supposed to be all decentralized and sing kumbaya together, and we don't need the regulators. Do you think that the regulators are overstepping their mark, or do you think that, you know, we need them even more now than ever?
I do believe strongly that we do need regulators, because like we are speaking today, we are all about speculation, and everybody wants to grab the bigger pie of the bigger piece of the pie. Because of that, you know, we need somebody who can control the frenzy. So I do believe regulators play a very important role in ensuring that there is stability and there is protection. I'm being protected as a user of the cryptocurrency of Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency. I need to be protected also maybe as a business person. So regulations are very, very important, or the regulator is very, very important. But at the same time, the regulator should not come in as an enforcer or as somebody who's going to prevent innovation from happening. So when the market is, or when the country does not really understand what this thing is, because I do believe there's a lot of confusion as, you know, what exactly are people regulating. You know, you'll find that maybe sometimes the kind of regulations that they're bringing, you can't really pinpoint as why is this regulation has been set. So, but if the regulator understand what they're trying to do, if it's against money laundering, you know, it's against terrorism and all that, yeah, it's good. But we should look at it as regulator, not to hinder innovation from happening. You find that people are in the space. I'm one person who has gone through a lot through the hands of the regulator, maybe because of what they've had, or a lot of maybe as a way of not understanding what I'm doing. And then at the end of the day, you find yourself, you know, being clamped down, and you don't even know how to to have a voice or teach people what you really want people to understand. So I do believe, yes, regulations are very important, but they should not be put as a way of suffocating innovation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Ernest, on this point, do you think that the regulations are helping with the innovation, or do you think it's hindering it? And I mean, I know you've got a lot of experience across various countries in Africa. Are there any that are getting it right and others that are getting it wrong, or pushing the boundaries too far in terms of what they're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, in Africa we have all these different economies with different forms of governance, political frameworks, and also different levels of evolution, you know, in terms of democratic institutions and also technological institutions. So you cannot compare, for example, Nigeria's fintech environment with that of Burundi. They are different in both sides, politically and all of that. But they had to go through some very difficult challenges because, as you mentioned earlier, Alakanani, their first reaction is to clamp down. Because what the hell is this? I don't know what this is. But suddenly, you start seeing that everybody is talking about it, youth. And so in the case of Nigeria, it became so prevalent and ubiquitous that finally they realized that, okay, if we ban this thing, it just creates a larger black market. Why not put together a framework? So it went from the central bank now to the SEC with a new director general who was more, let's say, friendly, open-minded, and understood, actually took the time to go get a PhD, studying blockchain, studying what we were doing, to now put together a framework where we now have stablecoin adoption and support for this. Kenya is also working very hard at this, to basically understand lessons from other markets and to put together a framework to see how they can tax it ultimately so that the government can generate some revenue. Because you look at Nigeria, for example, I think it was over 60 billion that was done through Binance alone. And they didn't see a penny of that. And then they had to arrest some people, lock them up for a few months or whatever. So the regulators are waking up. And as they wake up, you have this thing where the first two will get it, then three, and then suddenly there's this, how do you call it, the 100 monkey effect, and everybody's talking about it now. The youth want things, the Gen Zs want things better, faster, cheaper. They're not going to line up to open bank accounts when they can get wallets. So the regulators are beginning to listen. And we feel that once the use cases we have in Nigeria, in Kenya, South Africa, become more known and understood, then other markets will be blessed. Now, what is happening also in the US, with the likes of BlackRock, ETFs adopting, it's now making regulators, at least within Africa, now to sit up and say, okay, if they can accept it now, then maybe we should be looking at it, so to speak, versus just resisting and feeling that it's going to take away their power. Because when all of this started, it was more fear-driven, like we're going to take down governments, don't need you, all of that. So they took off the gloves and came down hard. But we believe that from what the experiences we've seen, we've helped to broker meetings between some countries, regulators. As recent as yesterday, there are two major countries come together. They are heads of the regulatory environments to talk and exchange ideas. And we feel that we'll continue to help sort of do that cross-pollination of ideas to ensure that they can, rather than starting from zero, they can copy-paste what the best regulatory solutions are. And we are also working on a solution that would allow virtual asset service providers, as they're being called in these markets, Binance and the other exchanges and other platforms, to be able to share their data. One of the solutions we are going to be developing at Interstellar, or we are developing, has to do with aggregating this data, provide insights to central banks, insights to regulators, and insights to the various tax offices. Mm-hmm. Because right now, they didn't have any visibility. And without data, you can't make informed decisions. So by building this platform for them and bringing it to them, they are very interested in working with us on that. And we hope that that platform we are developing will now be taken to other markets, quickly allow the regulators to understand what we are doing, understand the markets and what the issues are, where the opportunities lie, and then ultimately allow these technologies to be adopted.
Lorien, I know you're very pro-regulation and you think it is needed in this space. Do you not think that by having the regulation, it's endorsing for you, I'm saying for your opinion, all the wrong things? So it's just almost fueling this idea of, cryptocurrency. It's giving legitimacy, let me put it that way, more legitimacy to cryptocurrency markets. And then it's moving even further away from Satoshi's vision.
No, Satoshi's vision was all about regulation. That's why he built a system that had proof of work to make it accountable. Those miners are accountable to law enforcement. They're too big to hide. So regulation, look, is a fact of life. Now, I agree to your point about, do I think that regulation might be bad in some cases? Yes, because by giving a crypto exchange a license, you kind of make people think, oh, this is legit. This is real. It's been licensed. It's now a fact of life. It's a real thing. I need to get in here. I'm safe. You see, that's what regulation does. When you're regulated and licensed, people think, oh, you're safe. And also remember, it's not just exchanges. It's also dodgy companies. There've been lots of dodgy companies that are out there, and they can get licensed and regulated, and then they can fail. So I don't think that regulation solves the problem, but the fact of life is that we have regulations. And when we're dealing with financial services, there are regulations that exist. And if we want to reap the benefits of having a blockchain that can lower the cost of payments or do all the wonderful things we want to do, we have to obey the regulations. We have to follow the rules because those exist. Yes, I'm not a fan of regulation per se, because sometimes regulations hobble things and that. But if you have them, then you have to follow them. Otherwise, you're going to be operating outside of that regulatory environment, and that means users won't be able to use you because they're going to think this is sketchy and dodgy, and I don't want to go there. There are very well-established rules around payments. You have to know your customer. You have to apply limits. You have to be able to freeze funds. You have to be able to trace those payments. You have to be able to seize those payments. And so if we want people to use Bitcoin, then you have to be able to seize it, trace it, confiscate it, all the things that crypto and Bitcoin BTC are trying to build against. So I want to see a world where people benefit from Satoshi's creation, that they benefit from the low-cost payments. And Satoshi wanted that world too. That's why when he built Bitcoin, he made it regulatory compliant. It is traceable, it is seizable and confiscatable. Let me tell you how Bitcoin is seizable and confiscatable, because people think it's not. That's false. Miners are big. And if the government says these coins are from the proceeds of crime, this is terrorist financing or money laundering, all they need to do, global court order, go to the very few miners that are out there, there's not a lot, and say, if you do not freeze those funds, if you process those transactions, we're going to shut you down. And Satoshi even described that. He said that if you're honest as a miner, you'll make money. If you're dishonest, you're going to lose money. How? You're going to get shut down. And that's what mining was all about. Do you know that Bitcoin is not protected by technology and secured by processing? It's secured by the miners not wanting to get shut down and arrested. Bitcoin is protected by the law. It's not protected by technology. Mining is to make sure that whoever is running this network is accountable to law enforcement. You don't hear this, right? You just hear, no, Bitcoin is technology, processing power, and it's like unstoppable, unconfiscatable. Satoshi Nakamoto wanted Bitcoin to be used. He wanted it to change the world. He wanted to reduce the costs of payments. He didn't want to undermine central banks. That's a myth that crept in. He didn't want to create a government-resistant system. He wanted a system that can help people, and he could understand what it took to build a regulatory compliance system. That's why Bitcoin is transparent. That's why it's traceable and seizable and confiscatable. So regulation is a fact of life like tax. You got to pay it. You might not like it, but you got to pay it. If there are rules around payments and you got to do all these checks and things, you got to do it. And Satoshi wasn't an anarchist. He knew that. That's why when you understand Bitcoin, you can see it plain as day. But most people don't understand that.
Okay. Thanks, Lorien. Alakanani, you've been in this industry for a long time. So if we was to say in 10 years from now, what do you think the future holds? Where do you think we're going to be sitting? Hopefully we'll still be here in 10 years' time. We might have aged a bit. I don't think Lorien would have grown hair by then. I don't think you had hair 10 years ago, did you, Lorien? No, I didn't. No. I've always known him to look like this. So, but looking into the future, where do you think we're going, particularly here in Africa?
I think we're going to see a lot of maybe governments and a lot of countries coming up with CBDCs, because by following what the news and what is happening in other countries, you see that governments are talking about CBDCs. So I think it's more of where they are going. When they're not talking more of adopting Bitcoin as a currency to use for the countries. Maybe as for reserves, we're going to see a lot of countries picking up Bitcoin as some form of reserve for their economies. But what I foresee, I'm just thinking we're going to see a lot of countries coming up with their stable currencies paid against their own local currencies. That's what I see, because it's what they feel it's going to be safe. They're looking for security. They're looking for something that they can be able to control. So if they are to adopt maybe Bitcoin as a currency for their countries, I feel that they will feel like that they can't control that. So CBDCs is more where I foresee us sitting here talking CBDCs instead of talking Satoshi vision and the Bitcoin white paper and what Satoshi's vision was, how he wanted us to use Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer kind of network where we are going to be sending currency among each other and all that. We're not going to be talking about that. I foresee a lot of developments coming. Like even today, when you sit down here, we're talking about a lot of things. We're talking Solanas, we're talking Interstellar, we're talking Ethereum, we're talking all these things that are coming up. From the first time I came here, I think it was 2016, the first Bitcoin conference, if I'm not mistaken. We keep on changing, what we're talking about. We're no longer talking about, Bitcoin, move Bitcoin, blockchain. Today we're talking about something else. But CBDCs, for sure, I think that's where we are going to be talking about, and real world assets and tokens. That's what we're going to be talking about. People are going to be tokenizing this and that and this and that. So I think that's where in the next coming 10 years, that's what we'll be talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, how are we doing on time? 2 minutes, okay. All right, seeing that we've got 2 minutes, I'm going to put you all on the spot. I don't know if you've got 30 seconds to tell an anecdotal story of something you've been through in the last 10 years. I don't know if you can think of something off the top of your head. If you can't, I won't put you on the spot. I don't know, Lorien, can you think of any
what?
any anecdotal funny story of something that you've been through in the last 10 years in this space? Something that someone's asked you, or this was an unplanned question, so we'll...
Funny. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
It doesn't have to be funny. It can be... Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, go
Let me quickly think. I think my low point in this journey for me was I was the country manager of Binance at the time for 9 whole weeks. And one of the main reasons I resigned was we were in the middle of the MTR scandal that went on. And a lot of the people that were putting money into MTR were using Binance as a platform. And I called it out, and I publicly said, I believe this is a Ponzi scheme, and I believe it's a scam. And I remember that night my inbox got hit with a lawyer's letter from MTR, and it was a very, very aggressive letter, and I got legal counsel the next day from somebody who had been involved in a Ponzi scheme, and they'd said to me, you will literally be run off the road if you pursue this, and if I was you, I would keep quiet, and for me that was sort of a very low point in my journey to realize how dark the industry could be. So that's my random story. Anyone else got a random one?
Yeah, I have an interesting one. I remember 2011, a friend of mine reached out to me. There was a platform for trading Bitcoins, local Bitcoins or something, long time ago. I kept harassing, bombarding me. Please, can you teach me about this technology? What is it? Like, here we go. We're going to have to explain this all over to him. And we're all technical people playing with it, and rigs, mining in the early days. And so I invited him over to my office. His name is Anthony Diorio. And said, okay, I'll give you a Bitcoin so you can play with this. He said, no, I'll pay for it. I said, okay, $13. What's the market rate? Did that. Then he lost his secret key. So he couldn't get it back. So he's still stuck somewhere in the, ether. And Anthony, incidentally, now met a young man called Vitalik Buterin. And we then invited us to a pub downtown Toronto called Paupers Club, 2011. And we sat there imagining that this Bitcoin thing it was a bit limited, but it needed more functionality. And so Vitalik, this skinny kid from Waterloo, was like, got an idea, I could get this going. I gave them the Bitcoins, their first Bitcoins, and today we have something called Ethereum, ultimately. So I always think that if I had not reacted to that nagging person from local Bitcoins, bring him to my office, training him, and that created an event string that led to what is arguably the second most powerful crypto today. And, it's funny, but I did not continue in that journey. Again, I was more interested in mass effect for as many people as possible, not more on the speculation side, but I'm happy to have contributed in that, and we laid the foundation for blockchain in Canada back then.
Right.
I think for me, it's when my bank account was shut down because apparently I was running a Ponzi scheme, which they never gave me the name of the Ponzi scheme. I think that's for me, that's one thing that really got me and put me through hell. And I think the second thing that something to me was when somebody said, do I know that by being step much into Bitcoin, I'm ushering the Antichrist? So I think for me, those are the two incidences that I always think of, like, oh man, be in this
What did you
space.
get yourself into? Lorien, anything from your side?
Oh, no, I don't know. Nothing interesting. Just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But I'm still fighting Satoshi's vision, fighting the fight. And yeah, it's
Still has no hair to show for it. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much.